Hi. So let's discuss the question creation guideline. So before we start this, you should understand what is the limitation of this platform. The most important thing that you need to understand is that you cannot probe on this platform because you're actually not live there. Your video is talking to the student. So when you cannot probe, that means you're not there face to face with the candidate, which means neither the candidate nor the interviewer can ask any questions with each other. So the trick is, the most important trick is here is the interviewer needs to ask question in such a manner that it is complete in its nature, so that the student doesn't have any doubt about the question. And the second point that you need to take care is that your language needs to be very, very simple, because the candidates who are going to practice your interviews can be from different background. Their communication might not be that great. Still, they should be able to understand your language. So let's understand a very important question. How can an interviewer draw a diagram and write equation or write text while asking question to the aspirant? Say I am the interviewer and I want to ask a question by drawing a diagram. How do I do it? So as you can see in the image here, I am writing on a pen digitizer. So there is a pen digitizer that we use to convert whatever you're writing on the paper into a digital form. So if you look physically, it looks like this. It's in my hand here. This is how it looks. And the experts write on this. And whatever they write, it is recorded. And that recorded video is imbibed on the main video, like you can see in the image here. So I am writing on the pen digitizer, and basically I'm drawing a circuit on the pen digitizer, and the same circuit is seen on the expert board, which is imbibed in the video. So let's talk about another limitation of this platform, the limitation of student whiteboard. So if you see the diagram, the candidate, that is me, is there at the bottom right hand side. There is a whiteboard and there is an expert. So the candidate is writing on the whiteboard. Can the candidate draw a diagram on the whiteboard? No. Can the candidate write an equation on the whiteboard? No. Then what can the candidate do? It can type everything that is there on the keyboard. So let's talk about how to design interviews. So you need to understand that you need to create 4 interviews. 2 interviews for the freshers, the students who are there in the final year, who have no experience. And another 2 interview which will be of advanced level. It is for the people who have 1 year experience. Secondly, what will be the duration of the interview? The duration of the interview should be around 30 to 45 minutes. Make sure it is not more than that. Number of questions in each interview, it varies. Some experts keep it 5, some experts keep it 7. So what is the tentative interview structure? So the tentative interview structure you can see on the screen here is main questions, then follow-up questions, and then again main questions, then some follow-up questions. The sequence of questions could be from different category. Generally, the experts, industry professionals, they start with an introduction question. Then they ask some concept questions. Further, some people would like to continue with the concept, but majority of the industry professionals go with the coding questions that they ask. You can see continuously question 3 is a coding question. Question 3.A, which is a follow-up question, is again a coding question. 3.B is again a coding question, but it's again a follow-up question. Further, then non-behavior question and then behavior question. Hence, they conclude their interview. Again, on the last column, you see assessment parameters. It's an example I have given here. So for every question, there is a parameter, the assessment parameter that you need to assign. For example, few of the experts put their introduction question. There they want to see whether the candidate is achievement oriented or not. In the concept question, few of the industry experts want to see the approach or the problem solving skill of the candidate. Some look at logic in some questions, some look at subject knowledge, In the coding question, you can see very clearly they want to see understanding of the programming language. Some wants to see their coding efficiency. So these are the assessment parameters. There are many assessment parameters. I'll tell you what are those assessment parameters in detail in the next slide. Now, there are 2-3 things that you need to note here. Very, very critical, very important. One, candidates, the experts can change the structure of the interview. It's not necessary that you follow the same sequence. You can have your own sequence. It's basically your interview. So you decide the sequence of the question. But it should be the same way as you would have taken a real interview. Next, experts can design questions which has more than one parameters. Like there are certain questions where the assessment parameters could be 1, 2 or maybe 3. Next is experts can have new type of questions. There could be many type of questions: behavior, non-behavior, coding, concept, introductory questions. There are many other type of questions. You can introduce your own type of questions. It's not necessary. There's just a tentative structure which gives you an idea how to design the flow of the interview. Assessment parameters. So I have listed down the assessment parameters here for different type of questions. So you see, behavior question, the assessment parameters are like teamwork skill, planning and organization, responsibility and dedication, customer oriented, maturity, like that. Introductory questions, people like to see their confidence, communication skill, assertiveness, achievement oriented. There are realistic self-appraisal, whether they're talking about themselves in a realistic way or not. Non-behavior questions, innovation, creation, creativity, problem solving skills, logic, analytical thinking. Coding questions, very popular. Coding quality, code walkthrough capability, approach, the way they are approaching the coding question. Concept questions, again they try to assess their approach, subject knowledge, problem solving, logic, analytical thinking. So these are some of the assessment parameters associated with a particular type of question. Now, important part here is experts can add their own assessment parameters. This assessment parameters is a tentative list which almost covers 70 to 80%. But if you want to have your own assessment parameter, welcome, please do it. So let's talk about some key points that you need to remember while you're creating the questions. Number 1, hire or not hire. Now here, the quality of question and the sequence of question is very critical. Your interview should be such that after looking at your own interview responses of the aspirants, you should be able to decide whether you will keep this candidate in your team or you will not keep him in your team. So you should design your interviews in such a way where you can take some decisions. Sequence of questions. So the questions that you design should be planned properly as far as sequence is concerned. It should not look like a set of quiz questions. So you understand the difference between a quiz and an interview set of questions. So you need to plan the sequence of the questions very, very properly. Main questions. So the questions when you create, make sure you don't copy it from somewhere. Try to create some new questions. You can refer some of the very popular websites, or you can get inspired by them, but you should not copy directly from them. Like Geek for Geeks, Hacker Google, Code Jam, Hacker Earth. You can use those questions. You can understand. You can get inspired by those questions and create your own challenging new questions. Scenario-based questions. So for this platform, as far as my experience goes, the best kind of questions that you can pose to the candidates are scenario-based. You can talk about a scenario, you can talk about a code, you can talk about a snippet, you can talk about any situation, and you can ask the students why, what, how, these kind of questions on this platform. Even the practical questions which we face when we are working in the corporate, when we face some kind of practical scenarios, we can put those scenarios in front of the students and they can learn a lot from them. And you can ask questions based on those scenarios. So the practical questions can be best posed using this scenario technique. Next is coding questions. One of the popular mistakes that industry professional do on this platform is they ask the candidate to write long codes. That doesn't work. You need to ask the candidates to write maximum 8 to 10 lines. Actually, in an interview, they cannot write more than that. Now, you can also give them snippets, small codes, and you can ask them what could be the output, why the output is like this. You can pose questions on those snippets. You need to make sure that whatever coding you're asking them, it should be language agnostic. I mean, we are not here to find out whether he knows any particular language properly or not. Whether he's good with the logic or the flow or the flow chart, that's good enough. But if you really want to judge the syntax, his ability to program in a particular language, we are getting those kind of editors soon on our platform. You will be able to do that as well. Puzzle questions. Please avoid puzzles on this platform. Don't try to put any puzzles in your interview. So let's talk about follow-up questions. So you can see here on this slide, there is a main question and there is a follow-up question 1, that is 1A. 1B is a follow-up question 2. Again there is a main question, and then again there is a follow-up question of the same question. 2A is a follow-up question here. Now why I am discussing a follow-up question is because it's very, very critical to understand why follow-up is required and how you can create smart follow-up questions. The first thing that you understand is that this is not a live face-to-face interview. So if you can create some intelligent follow-up questions, it can mitigate the limitation of interaction. So what is a good follow-up question? Number 1, you can anticipate by your experience that what will the candidate miss while answering your main question. You can put that as a follow-up. You can also point to certain areas, new areas with a main question. You can also point to certain areas where you are expecting the candidates to answer a question. Third is, you can have the new question, of course, but it should be an extension of the main question. That's a smart, intelligent follow-up question on this platform. And what is the maximum number of follow-up questions that you can have? It's 2. You can have 1, you can have maximum 2. I would advise you to have more and more follow-up questions. As per my experience goes on this platform, it looks interactive to the candidates. So let me talk about some sample questions. You can use diagrams to ask questions. You can see here, there is a circuit been drawn, case 1, case 2. There's an operational amplifier and there's a circuit. You can draw these kind of diagrams and ask questions. Why, how, what, these kind of questions. And then for every question, you have to put an assessment parameters. Here there is a assessment parameters called concept understanding and expected duration to answer this question. You need to also mention what is the expected duration of answering this question. Here it is written as 5 minutes. You can also use real images to ask questions. Here you can see in this diagram, I have used a PCB board. It's an image of a actual PCB board and questions are asked on those. That's also pretty interesting to ask. Again, assessment parameter is mentioned. Again, expected duration to answer this question is mentioned. So for every question you need to mention these 2 things. There's another example of real image. Here you can see a bridge there's a crack on the leg of the bridge and questions can be asked on those as well. There are some industry professionals who use videos to ask questions. Here there's a video which is talking about a 4-bar mechanism and you can ask questions on these videos as well. So question creation process. So what is the process? So the interview creation process is divided into 2 phases. In phase 1, you're going to create 2 interviews. And in phase 2, you're going to create another 2 interviews. So totally it comes to 4. So how does it work? So if you see in phase 1, which is, let's talk about step 1. So first thing you do is you create the first draft of the interview. Then your first draft goes to the reviewer. Who are the reviewer? Senior industry folks. Those people review your questions and give you feedbacks. then you implement those feedbacks or you debate. And this cycle goes on till the questions get stabilized. Once it is stabilized, the first interview is finalized. In the same way, you create the first draft of the second interview. Again, reviewer, again, iteration happens, implementation of the feedback happens, and then the second interview is again finalized. So once you have your 2 interviews which are finalized in terms of quality and sequence of the question, it is a balanced interview. The final thing is you need to practice those interviews using a Zoom software. So you need to practice at home in front of the camera, in front of the laptop camera, using the Zoom software. You need to record your videos, share it with the reviewers. Reviewers will give you the feedback. And once you're comfortable and even the reviewers get confidence on you in terms of communicating with the camera, then you come to the studio like me here. I'm sitting in the studio and your questions get recorded. Once the question is recorded, it goes for video enhancement. We clean it up, we edit it, make it presentable, and you go live. The same thing, the same process, step 1, step 2, step 3 is repeated in phase 2 as well. Now we have defined a format. So what is the format of submitting the interview questions? The name of the format is called Interview Recording Format, IRF. Now in this IRF, here you can see there is a question and there's a lot of cross. That means it's a question. It's an example. So under every question, there is a question table. So for every question, you need to fill this table. Even for the follow-up question, you need to fill this table. What is there in this table? 1, assessment parameter. What is that you are going to assess through this question? 2, expected time to answer this question. Say you expect the candidate to answer this question in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. You need to mention it there. 3, would you like to use whiteboard to ask this question? So when you are asking this question to the candidate, are you going to use the whiteboard? Whiteboard means the smart board, the pen digitizer I was talking about. Now, do you expect the candidate to use their whiteboard to answer this question? You need to mention that as well. It's just a yes or no there. Any limitation that you want to put on the candidate while answering the question. Say you want the candidate not to use any function while coding. You need to mention it there on this, in this table. It helps you when you're recording the questions. Any assumptions you want the candidate to assume while answering the question. You need to mention that as well. Next, and the last one is tentative short answer to this question. It is very important because this will help the senior folks, the reviewers, to understand as to what exactly you're expecting out of the question from the student, from the candidate, right? You don't need to write it in full detail. You can just write it in a very short form so that the reviewer can understand it. So this is how the questions needs to be submitted. There is a separate doc file which will be supplied to you. It will be given to you, and you need to write all your questions and give us for the review. So this is all about question creation guideline. You have any kind of doubt, please feel free to talk to the GoPrac team and get the details about it. Thank you very much. Good luck.